30. He separates. He's to the 20, to the 10, to the 5. Touchdown, Florida State. Warwick got up third down.
Winky looking Winky. Wants to throw the knockout punch to Warwick. Warwick open. Touchdown. He does a touchdown. He did catch it. Touchdown, Florida State. Oh, Peter Warwick, how'd you do that? Kermit Whitfield to the left side. A hole to the 30. Kermit Whitfield to the 30. To the 20. 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, FSU. Kermit Whitfield. A 100-yard touchdown. Here's the snap. Winston rolling right. Throws the pass on the other. It's caught. It's caught. It's caught.
For the end zone battle. Coleman. Touchdown.
We're doing it for everybody. We're doing it big all over the country, all over the world. And I'm proud. I'm proud to say I'm a Florida State Seminole.
Garnet Old, no inside info, no contacts, no problem. Vince, this is my
almost
Garnet
no background.
This is my Garnet and Cold episode. I am under the weather. Have been 3 days into a flu bug. Struggling here, so we're gonna let Vince kind of lead the way and ping. You know, when he wants me to say something, kind of lead me into it. And but Vince, we got a special show today.
We do. It's your flu game, or your COVID game, or your, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's consumption or dysentery. Yeah. I don't know what you've got, but you don't sound right. You do not sound right. So welcome everybody back. We had a very, I had a very great time this past weekend at the homecoming game. Ryan, as everybody knows, has been relocating to Tampa, Florida for his new gig. So he wasn't able to join me live at the game. But I figure we start, Ryan, if you don't mind. We'll start with a little recap of last week, because we didn't really get a chance to talk about that, and just give some final thoughts on that game. And we do have a special segment. Our Is That Math Mathin segment will be part of our wrap-up of that. So, Ryan, just, you were watching the game from afar. What was your take on the game? Were you able to kind of absorb the vibe that was going on?
It's hard. It's always hard, right? When you're watching on TV, and they really didn't do too many big crowd shots on like excitement shots. They kind of focused, more on the good news is Herb Street, Chris Fowler calling the game, which is always good. I always appreciate them when they're on the call. But what I did appreciate was that I never once felt like the game was in danger. Not once. There wasn't even when we got down early, even at halftime. Yeah, I was kind of feeling like, okay, yeah, they got their shots in, but I don't think they can move the ball consistently on us if we actually punt the ball and get them in having to drive the entire field. And I thought, it's us. Kind of the MO of this team is kind of hang around and let a team hang around and then score a bunch of points in a row, and that's exactly what happened. So it's almost, this game went pretty much by the numbers of most of the games this year.
Yeah, I mean, when I was at the game, we talked about before the game that Duke's defense was, better than everybody probably expected, especially for the casual fan that's not necessarily paying attention. The Duke game's going to be a good game. Everybody's like, "Are you kidding me? It's Duke. They're a basketball school." But if you're not paying attention, if you're more of a casual fan, I could see where that would be a little bit of a shock.
Yeah, I got some texts. My dad likes Florida State and watches me, a lifelong fan, but he's not plugged in. And so he was texting me like at halftime. He was like, WTF, like, how are we losing to Duke? And I was like, well, Duke's actually good. The reason they're ranked is because they are pretty good for a Duke team. So I think the casual fan probably wasn't aware that Duke has been legit for the last 2 years, really.
Yeah, and the other piece of that was, we weren't sure whether their quarterback was going to play, and then he came out. But we talked about the fact that even if he did play, he would be limited, hobbled. He would be at a lower percentage of what he needed to be. And even though, the early part of that game, it seemed like that things weren't going well. But really, I was never really worried about the game either, because that quarterback wasn't doing anything. and neither through the air or on the ground. So in my, as I'm watching the game, the way I look at it is it's only a matter of time before the talent and our ability to score starts to take over, and that's what happened.
Yeah, I think the confidence for me came from, when it happened at Boston College where it started to get nervous. We didn't know how this team would react to that kind of, this year, to that kind of challenge that they were not expecting. But over the last 3-4 games, we have seen how they respond. So I kind of had a feeling that what happened would happen, which is, second half adjustments, both defensively and offensively. And I felt like we played a pretty complete second half. It was good to see. However, Vince, I do want to say I don't think they would have beat us even if their quarterback had stayed in. I do think it would have been closer, but it was hilarious because you just see the second that other quarterbacks come in, zero respect for the passing game, and they just I remember he snapped the ball the first or second snap in the game, and it was pretty much like an all-out, like everyone was coming, and the line collapsed, and he just immediately went down. And I was like, okay, they're not worried about this kid at all. They're sending the house. They're telling their D lines, don't contain, just get home. It was fun to see. We the game was over at that point.
Yeah, I mean that I was almost running in from the stands.
Yeah,
he was going to run, and he's going to Katie bar the door. We're all coming in. We're coming in hot. So, yeah, they really had no answer once we started to roll, and especially once Jordan Travis started to run the ball. And again, and everybody's talking about this, and they ask the question, why are we not running? Why is it not running all the time?
Yeah,
and I think that is just smart, judicious. Use him when we need him, because he's not the biggest guy, and we cannot risk him getting hurt where he's going to be out for a lengthy period of time.
When they did use him, you were reminded of how absolutely dominant he can be when he starts running the ball. I mean, the cuts he makes, I love when he puts his foot in the ground right past the line of scrimmage, and man, he has the 0 to 60. But there were some, concerns in the game, some interesting calls, don't you think? Some fourth down calls, maybe.
Yeah, there were a couple of interesting fourth down calls, and I think this is Ryan's segue into
our sponsor.
Is that Math Mathin?
This is the time. That's a little Linus Tech Tip reference right there.
We've not had Parker on the show for a little bit. We're going to bring him back right now. So let's pull Parker in here. And if you've not, this is interesting. Let me get rid of my banner. If you've not been watching during the Is That Math Mathin segment, this is where we get the professionals in to talk about, where the coaches maybe have made good decisions or poor decisions or meh decisions on whether, to go forward on fourth down or what have you. Parker is kind of in the biz, as it were. And if you're interested to know more about that, you can go back and look at our previous shows and talks about that. So, but Parker, there were only a couple of maybe 3 fourth down scenarios in this game that we want to talk about. So, overall impressions, though, what did you think about the game?
I was at the game, as you know, and so I definitely had the same feeling as Ryan that the game was never really out of control for Florida State, even with Duke having the lead for the first half and going into the second half. It just seems like as you get more possessions throughout the game, I mean, the overall result will come to pass, and that's what ended up happening, especially once it got into the fourth quarter. And once their quarterback went down, that was another big part of the game that maybe Florida State fans don't want to talk about as much because the quarterback's not going to be out there on the field for when our offense scores 21 straight. But still, the dynamic of the game changes a little bit on defense. And while I don't think that they would score 21 themselves, they probably would have gotten some points to make it look a little closer. Sure. But I ultimately believe that the result was what I expected. And you just kind of feel bad for the quarterback going down on that play. Fisk definitely wasn't trying to do anything, as opposed to what Duke fans may have been saying at the game, unfortunately. But it was just tough, and you don't want to see him go down after what he did earlier this season and what he's done to get back after the Notre Dame game. But it was a
Yeah, I
fun
mean,
game.
it was fun. I mean, we didn't really talk too much about the vibe, and we can talk about that a little bit later in the show. But you know, we talked about whether to play that quarterback or not, and maybe at that point when he goes down and he starts hobbling again, Elko says to himself, I shouldn't have played him. I shouldn't have played him because the chances of them winning were not great in general. And now they've got more really important games to play. So I wonder if he second guessed himself after that happening, kind of hoping and praying nothing additional would happen to him. But the football gods, if you tempt them, they're going to often make you pay.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like he wanted to come back in the game too, and the coach was kind of taking over at that point and saying, "We might need you later this season. Just stay on the sideline, be supportive, that type of thing." But yeah, my family that I was with, we all saw him warming up on the sideline, jogging back and forth. We thought he was coming back in.
Yeah, he definitely wanted to.
I know you were in the stadium, but it was just so funny from the home broadcast because he was trying to sell like, "Hey, come on, I'm ready," and
I'm
like
ready.
walking up to every assistant coach, and they kept panning over to it on the broadcast. And She's laughing, like he's really, really trying to make his case, but I doubt they're gonna put him at risk here. But hey, my man was doing interesting workout drills and everything. It was awesome.
And it was noticeable that he was in pain. So let's not pretend like he was putting on a good performance there. You could tell. So let's go ahead and pull up the fourth downs from the game, and we can talk through these. I don't have the video up for these this week. The condensed game had skipped one or two of these, and so there's only three to talk about though. So let's talk about the first one. 4th and 1 from the Duke 36. This is in the first quarter. And this is painful, man. 4th and 1, and you don't get it. Is this the one where they weren't lined up correctly and they were trying to quick snap it?
Yeah, that was the one where Jordan Travis was in the pocket and like looking over the defense before, and he saw that he might have a gap to the left, but Duke did a good job of stepping up pretty quickly. They filled the gap, stemmed the gap pretty nicely, and got him around his leg and around his ankle to keep him short. And that I don't think there was any controversy behind that one. I think everyone kind of agreed with that one and accepted the result at that point because a field goal isn't really guaranteed, even with Fitzgerald playing really well this season. You just don't really want to roll the dice on like a 50-plus yard attempt when you have Jordan Travis in that offense in less than a yard, I think it was, and he just gets tripped around his ankles.
Yeah, one thing.
Yeah,
Man,
I think.
you think that
Go ahead.
you should have just followed the center, man. Like it felt like you looked for something that it didn't seem like it was there at all. And if you just follow the center, I think you convert almost. What I wonder what the percentage is. If you know it, Parker, I would love to know it.
The quarterback sneak rate on 4th and 1 is actually higher than the normal 4th down conversion rate. I think it's in the high 70s the last time I checked. It's just tough, I think, when you're playing against a defense that has two defenders playing the gaps on either side of the center, and that's the only reason that you wouldn't want to go with a quarterback sneak there. And Travis just thought he had something to the left, and you don't really want to blame him for taking a shot there because it kind of seemed like he kind of just hurried the snap a little bit, said we have an advantage, so just go with it, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, and it's early in the game, and it's a bummer that you don't get it because it's only 4th and 1, but it's not. It's not a critical point of the game. Was it still 0-0 at this point, or was it 7-0?
That was the first drive of the game, so it was 0-0.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, it's early. I don't get a lot of agita from that one. That one doesn't bother me that much.
I like
But
the
from
agita reference, Vince. The
you.
Italian coming out in you.
Absolutely. And when you get the agita, it's definitely a bad thing. But so Parker, from a professional's perspective, are we mathing here?
Yes, that is easily Mathin.
All right. So let's go ahead and do a little live mathing here, a little happy face.
Now we get to have some fun, though.
Here we go. All right. Let's go to the next one. 4th and 1. Apparently, we like the 36-yard line, regardless of whether it's on our side or theirs. Another 4th and 1, man. Trey Benson run for no gain. Let's talk through that one.
Yeah, this one was the one that caught everyone's attention. Multiple questions after the game for Norvell about it. A couple articles posted by Florida State in the last couple of days. Saw one by Corey Clark right after the game, and another one by Ira Schofel with the coach that had been with Florida State before and in the NFL for a while, and they got his opinion on it too. Very interesting thoughts they had, but to save time, I'll just go over what the base thoughts of that were. And at that point, separately for CAI, the company that I work for, generally we have a recommendation on 1 yard to go as far back as the team's own 15 to their own 10-yard line, somewhere in that range. And that's mainly to do with just how favorable it is to convert on 4th and 1. For this spot, I would have to assume it was in the mid 70s to maybe 73, 74% they were going to convert it, and that's more comparable to a free throw than a coin flip that some people might have said. And, even Steph Curry or Damian Lillard is going to miss a free throw, and you have to live with that result. And it's not a bad result when it's so early in the game, which I think some of the articles mentioned and conceded that point. The problem that I had looking at with some of these articles is that both of them said that this could ultimately cost Florida State, and it probably will cost them a game somewhere down the line. And that's just a little myopic because you're assuming that the only risk reward is going for it on 4th down. If you look at the biggest game of the year from last year, probably the bona fide national championship, since UGA TCU was just not fun. Right. The Georgia and Ohio State game from last year, Ohio State had a 4th and 1 on their own 34-yard line, very similar spot, and they were up by 11 at that point with like 9 minutes left in the game. Originally, they fake a punt and they get the first down. Georgia calls timeout. One of the best timeouts outside of the last 3 minutes I've ever seen, by the way, just as a side note, because Ohio State clearly had an advantage. They would have gotten the first down, but instead, after the timeout, they punt away. And the thought is, like the people that write the article, is that, you punt it back and you're going to get the ball back on your own 30 to 25-yard line in the same spot. And that's just not guaranteed. It doesn't make sense to make that point, especially when you saw that Duke ran through Florida State's defense like shit through a 10 horn, as Nick Saban would say. Sorry if I can't say that, but
no, that's fine.
And so you look at that Ohio State game from last year. Ohio State punts back to Georgia. It takes Georgia one play to score a touchdown. And Ohio State didn't give the 4th down a shot. They could have scored a touchdown to go up by 3 scores with like 5 minutes left in the game. Instead, you give it back to Georgia saying, well, they have to drive the whole field. It took them one play in 15 seconds. So you're not guaranteed to get the ball back in that same spot. And you still have a chance, if you're going to believe in your defense, they have a chance to get a stop and force a long field goal or maybe even a punt if they get behind the chains. And Florida State did do a good job. They got the stop on 3rd down, forced a 45-yard field goal, and he does make it, but you still forced the long field goal, which wasn't even guaranteed at that point either.
Yeah.
And I didn't even talk about the play call, which was, as a fan, the only thing I had a problem with, because you're going with a fake jet inside zone to the running back. And personally, I think Florida State has an advantage with all of their playmakers, all of their skill positions. I like Trey Benson, but me personally, I wouldn't, first of all, bring in a jet motion on the play so that the defense can get on their toes and kind of time up the snap a little bit. You're also handing the ball off right up the middle, and that's not necessarily the strength of Florida State, which was evident at that point in the game because they weren't
Definitely
able to
not.
run the ball on the first possession. But I would have liked to see if it were an RPO. I couldn't tell if it were an RPO. I don't remember if Jaheim Bell was looking back for the pass when he was going running parallel with the first down, but it may have just been a straight handoff on the play. But still, if you have Jordan Travis run out, that's what I'm more comfortable with in that situation. But I'm not going to doubt Norvell's play calling. I'm just saying I would have done something else because I think he's underrated as a play caller. Probably doesn't get talked about enough. So if he thought that's what he wanted to do there, then I'm fine and I'm going to live with the result.
Yeah, I think we could all second guess the play call for sure because it didn't end up working. But they have a lot of options, and they are really trying to push the issue with the running game over and over again, which I get. A little quick screen or something out like that probably would have netted the 1 yard, but that's all 2020.
Vince, do you
But
think it would
still,
have been a better option to hand it off to Deuce Spawn?
yes, that's correct. It would have been better to hand it off to Deuce Spawn because he's a pretty quick guy, and also some of the other running backs have shown a little bit more tenacity getting right to the hole. So whatever. I mean,
Isaiah Holmes did have a really good game.
yeah,
For
exactly.
those of you
So
that
the
don't
last 2
know,
weeks too.
the broadcast crew called Deuce Spawn about 17 times on the broadcast.
And not the first time this season. His last name is Span, just so we're all clear. So I think we're all in agreement that this is a Mathin deal here, right?
I think so.
Yes, we were in agreement.
Okay. I want to make sure because you gave a good breakdown of that, but I want to make sure I didn't miss something. Would have been construed to be, probably not a good idea. But all right, moving on. I added the field goal in here because it's still a 4th down decision, and maybe he should have gone for it here. They obviously got the points here, but it is at the Duke 14-yard line, and up until this point, we hadn't shown yet the barrage of points. Right, it hasn't started yet. So points are at a premium here. The game is still relatively close in terms of the score, maybe not in terms of what's happening play in and play out, but it's definitely close in the score. So go through this one for us.
Yeah, this one was just as close of a call, if not closer, than the one on the Florida State 36 earlier in the game. I don't think CAI had any problem with the field goal at this point, just because you're tying the game and the ordinary go range right there is around 3 to 5 yards in that situation. So this is definitely one where I think because it was closer, Norvell was kind of looking back on the last decisions and didn't really work out. And it also helps that you have a kicker that hasn't missed a kick this entire season. So you're going to go out there and you're going to get the 3 points if you send them out there. And there's definitely value in tying the game before the half. And I think this was right before Duke's really good drive at the end of the first half too. They took off almost half the quarter, left Florida State with like 30 seconds left, couldn't really do much with it. And that was another not talked about point of this game, was how well Duke did at that end of the half drive.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bemoaning about the refereeing in this game, and we could do that every week. If we're talking about the fact that a lot of Duke's success in the running game came on the heels of some things that could be construed as being holds. But why are we even still talking about this? This has been going on since Florida State joined the conference, and it doesn't just happen to Florida State. Like, the refereeing in this conference is terrible. So, it's just going to happen. So you just got to deal with it, and they took advantage of it. What else are you going to say?
I think
I
Duke
guess not
also had
much.
Duke had another situation like this, a very similar down and distance, but it was like a 4th and 3 at the Florida State 4 in the third quarter, and that was maybe the toughest decision in the game. That was the probably the most controversial and the one that had good sides to it. And that was the one where I think the quarterback threw incomplete, like in the back of the end zone. So
Yeah,
Florida State
yeah.
takes over and they
The
end up
backup
driving
quarterback. Yeah,
96 yards. Yeah, that was the play. That was the drive that they had lost him to.
yeah.
So back to this one, the Florida State at the Duke 14. The math was mathing, but if you had like a yellow face that was like moderately okay with it, that would go with that one. But
All
for
right,
now,
we're gonna do the blue
green
one.
will
This
do.
is the kind of like the either way, we're good. We'll do that one. How about that? It's the face.
Yeah.
Well, good. I think we found, and I think if you pay attention to this kind of stuff, you kind of know that Mike Norvell and this staff are pretty good at making these decisions. They're typically have the happy face. They're typically making decisions that the analytics would suggest that you make. So anyway, the math
Yeah,
is math. The math was
just
mathing.
right. Just to add on to that, if fans are nervous about Norvell's aggression, like getting them into trouble at any point, you should know that he is fairly conservative whenever it's a tight call. Whenever the numbers are kind of leaning and it's kind of going one way or another, he tends to kick. And it's good because Florida State has a really good special teams unit with Fitzgerald kicking very successful on field goals and Mastromano, who's like top 5, top 6 in net yards per punt this season. So he's getting his bang for his buck when he does decide to punt the ball or kick in these situations. And that's something you do like to see.
Well, good. That's good to know too, because there's a range, right? There's a range of definitely go, definitely not go, and then there's kind of stuff that's kind of in between. And what you're saying is when it's kind of in between, he tends to be more conservative on those kind of things.
Right. He's not the most aggressive coach out
Right.
there like our fans probably suspect.
Well, good. Love it. The math is mathing again for Florida State and the coaching staff here for the decisions that could be construed as being maybe controversial, which I don't believe are. Parker, as usual, stick around if you want. We can chat. We've got the pick'em coming up too. I want to talk a little bit about some other things with the game last week, just to kind of wrap some stuff up. First of all, being at the game was amazing. And I know, Ryan, you mentioned that you couldn't really get a lot of the energy from the broadcast. I haven't been to a game like that in quite a while. And obviously the stadium was packed. The weather was great. It's interesting with the blue, with the turquoise hues.
Yeah, don't
It's
like
interesting the type of visual that you got in the stadium. And some of it has to do with the LED lighting as well. It's not this stark bright all the time, but it kind of had this. I don't even know how to describe it, but I felt like the whole stadium had had an electricity about it, with kind of the blue going around the ribbon boards. During certain parts of the game. I know you don't like the turquoise, Ryan. I can tell just by your demeanor, and I don't think that's the COVID talking or whatever it is that we have here.
It's a little bit of both.
A little bit of both. But it just was an interesting color palette. And I know people have been talking about color palette on the football show, but it was just a different vibe to the game because of that. You had the garnet, the gold, and the turquoise was just kind of a cool look. The bands were great, and I had a great time. So let's roll on to the next thing here. I wanted to bring this up briefly. You guys have any thoughts on the sign stealing?
I mean, listen, it's a crazy story. It's kind of funny because Jim Harbaugh is always getting into trouble. Although he probably had nothing to do with it. Listen,
So he says.
It's very the feel is the New England Patriot, type thing again, where Spygate on it. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel. Do I think will probably lead to a bowl ban of some sort, or some reduced scholarships, or some kind of punishment? Sure. I mean, that's all I really have to say on it. I really don't care too much about Michigan, but it'll probably lead to something.
I don't care about Michigan per se, right? As far as what they're doing or whatever. But this is different than people trying to steal signs during a game. This is calculated, protracted. This is like laid out. People breaking rules, right? Which is different than maybe you catch on to someone's signals and stuff during a game. And it's I think because of that fact and because of all the evidence they have about it, I think you might see something a little more of a significant slap than they're saying, hey, everybody tries to steal a sign. Yes, that's true, but this is a little bit of a different thing. And I had noticed on social media the other night that there was apparently someone on a message board for Tennessee, I think, that had posted about this exact thing back in last December or something like that. So someone was already in the know about it, the exact information that's come out in the media now. Parker, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I obviously heard about it last weekend and everyone started reacting to it. I was kind of like, yeah, but one of the more interesting things I saw stemming from the investigation that's going on there now was how they've potentially been sending people to other schools and helping teams in games to help the opposition against a team they don't want to play in the playoff.
In the playoff, right.
And I thought that kicked it up a notch and was pretty interesting. I think that's what happened with now everyone started focusing, like you said, on the Tennessee games from last year where they played South Carolina it was South Carolina who played Tennessee and then Clemson, and their quarterback had averaged around 200 to 205 pass yards a game with 2 touchdowns, and then his last 2 games of the season where they were playing playoff caliber teams like Tennessee and Clemson, he was throwing for 400 to 500 yards with like 6 touchdowns, scoring 63 and 77 points in a game.
Yeah, I think I don't think you fault any staff for trying to find advantages, but this is a little bit over the top here, and they can claim they didn't know it was going on, whatever. I mean, they benefited from the efforts there. So I don't know, just something I wanted to, because Ryan, you and I hadn't really talked about that yet. So there you go. You want to move on to some Wake Forest preview?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Do it.
Before that, Vince, I want to mention one thing. I am still going to be at Fishware Brewing Company.
Oh.
It's going to be my flu game moment. I'll be there, but let's get into the pick'ems here, shall we?
How'd you do at the tables last night?
I'm about even.
Here's an idea. Why don't you give me half the money you were going to bet? Then we'll go out back, I'll kick you in the nuts, and we'll call it a day.
All right, let's roll it, Vince.
We're going to roll the pick'em?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
All right. Vince, you know what? I'm impressed with neither of these teams, Syracuse and Virginia Tech. I'm actually going to go with Syracuse to win this game straight up. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't think this will be a game I will watch, but I do think it'll be a game that has a result.
It will have a result. And by the way, Parker, I'll put yours right next to mine here so we can do that. Parker, what are your thoughts on this game?
Virginia Tech has looked better in recent weeks, even in the Florida State game, but I feel like the line is kind of where it is at now because Syracuse played their 3 toughest ACC teams to start off their schedule, and I think they're a little better than they've shown the last month or so, so I'm going to go Syracuse outright as well.
All right, Syracuse. I'm going to just for my buddy, I'm going to go Vatech here, and I'm going to pick him to cover.
Very nice. UConn, Boston College. So interesting here because BC's not any good, but neither is UConn. So give me Boston College, but not to cover.
All right, Parker.
I'll take Boston College with the cover here. I like how they've been doing in the last couple of weeks. I think last week was their Georgia Tech game, and they've done pretty well. I like Castellanos out of South Georgia. He's pretty good.
Yeah, they've been getting incrementally better, I believe, this year. And I'm going to go BC to cover here as well.
Now we get to Clemson, who, man, we talk about a collapse against Miami.
Yeah, let me tell you, Ryan, this game's on the CW.
Oh man, Clemson's falling on hard times.
Right after Riverdale.
Yeah, they're hard times there in Clemson, but you know what? They have all the players to win a national championship. They're like 3 plays away, and if they just keep recruiting only and not putting their faith in the portal, I'm sure they'll pull themselves out of this. But I will take Clemson in this game and to cover.
Yo, Parker.
I'm kind of going back and forth on this one. I liked watching the end of that game last week for them, and then watching Dabo kind of throw Klubnik under the bus in his post-game interview. Thought that was a little telling, but maybe for that reason, I'll take the NC State side of the spread and just say Clemson does not cover.
Okay, I'm going to go. I think Clemson is in a tailspin at this point. They have a quarterback that they cannot trust. And NC State, while they're not great on offense, their defense is still pretty good. I'm going to pick NC State to win this game.
Going Pitt Notre Dame. This is an easy pick for me. Give me Notre Dame and to cover all day long on this game. I don't believe in Pitt at all.
I really like Notre Dame's coach. I think they win games decisively, at least this year, in games where they're supposed to win. And I think they're doing a pretty good job right now. And I think they can cover this by a good margin.
I'm going to just put agree. Because there's no sense to continue to elaborate.
This one kind of surprises me unless they are thinking that the quarterback's not going to play for Duke. But I'm going to say he is going to play. Give me Duke.
This is a really close one. I haven't really thought about this much before, but because this game is at Louisville, I've been there before multiple times. It's one of my favorite away games to go to, and I think because it's there, I'll take Louisville on their side of the spread, so they will cover.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me too. And by the way, this is going to be a great game to watch. With Duke's defense, the way it's been playing, this is tough. I'm going to say I think Louisville's going to win this game. Well, and I think they are going to cover.
Oh, Vince, this is my favorite one, actually, besides our game.
Here comes Virginia.
So, Miami. Let's talk Miami. Big win against Clemson, man. Huge win. The Canes are believing again. The 10 fans that were there are very, very much full of bravado and talk online about how they, gave up that one game with the knee, and that was basically a win. And well, let me tell you what, this game has Miami letdown and embarrassment written all over it. So I'm going to take Virginia in the upset.
Oh my gosh. That's a strong, strong move. All right, Parker.
I'll take Miami no cover. I think they can win. I don't think they can blow them out.
I'm with you on that. I think this Miami team has a little bit more resilience than in the past, but I don't think they have the ability to cover this.
All right. Can we just all say yes to this one, UNC, by a lot?
Yeah, probably. Parker, what do you think?
I agree. I'll go ahead. I'll conform.
Got it. This game's happening right now, by the way. 7:30 game. It just started. Georgia Southern, and by the way, a major rival, Georgia State. Paying attention to some of the social media online between these two schools, let me tell you about some real hatred. I loved it. I loved it. As a new person, following Georgia Southern, I love the fact that there are some rivals that really, really bring the heat.
I will say, Vince, for those of you that have not aren't aware why we're talking about Georgia Southern, Vince's daughter attends there, and he goes up there to see her and to tailgate and all that fun stuff. You know what? I'm going to go Georgia Southern. Big win, going to 7-1 on the year. Good year for Georgia Southern.
You going to pick them to cover this, or are you going to be a 1-point victory?
They're going to cover. Yeah. Got it.
Parker.
Yeah, sorry. I think I'm going to go Georgia State. It's where my dad went. So sorry, Gavi. I'm going to go ahead and take the Panthers.
Got it. I got to go Georgia Southern on here as well. And I do think they're going to cover. Had to delete my score from last week there. So, all right. Now we're to the FSU game.
Yep. I'm glad we got all the nonsense of the outlets out there that report on anything that they can get their hands on with crazy graphics on YouTube and clickbait articles worried about Jordan Travis not playing in this game and he wasn't on the practice field on Tuesday. And I'm like, guys, you ever heard of a nice recovery day, a nice rest day for a guy who's still has to be healthy for the rest of the season? And then what do you know? The next day, Vince, he was at practice and throwing and moving around.
Making it happen.
So give me Florida State big. I'm actually picking Florida State to win 55-14.
Okay, yeah, big time.
Yes, it's that nooner atmosphere in Wake Forest. No one cares. The crowd is quiet. Florida State's chilling on the sidelines by halfway through the third.
All right. We've said that a lot this year, and it hasn't happened rarely. So, all right, Parker.
Yeah, I didn't know all that was going on about Jordan Travis, but even if he doesn't play and Tate Rodemaker, the guy with the highest QBR in the country right now, is playing, I would still take Florida State on their side of the spread. So, score prediction, I'll go 42-7.
All right. You and I are kind of in the same ballpark here. I believe we're going to hit about a 45-14 here. And we'll see what happens out on Snuggie Hill.
Yeah, it's man, there's nothing more. It's almost like the beginning on Thursday when you start watching the Masters and, they do the flyover and they're like, welcome to Augusta National, welcome to the Masters. That's how I feel when the ACC network or whoever, what channel is it on? Is it on ABC or is it on ACC?
I don't remember, but yeah, they pan over the grass and there's a dog catching a Frisbee, you know, somebody's
they
playing
show a lot of the
across.
campus, a lot of the pretty buildings around campus. So I really appreciate the vibe they put out of like a cocktail hour. It's going to be a blowout. And then I'm going to enjoy watching Florida play Georgia.
Here's the roll up, by the way. I redid this a little bit. You can see our scores there on the top left. That's the overalls.
Vince,
So,
I want to ask while Parker's on here, by the way.
Yeah.
An extra pick 'em. Who you guys got? Like, I actually think Florida, Georgia is a sneaky good game. I think Florida has a chance in that game with Brock Bowers being out.
I mean, I think they have a better chance with him being out. I have a hard time thinking Florida is going to do enough against that defense.
Yeah, this does seem like it would be a lower scoring game than it has been in recent years, but I'm not ready to pick against, or I should say, I'm not ready to pick Florida over Georgia yet. I don't think that's the team that has the capability to get over the hump this season. Maybe ask me next week and I'll take the team on the other side playing Georgia.
Right.
Vince,
right.
I just want you to be prepared for the eye emojis when Miami is losing by 10 points in the third quarter to Virginia this weekend, and I text you.
I'd be happy to be wrong. I was in a lengthy conversation on Twitter, which I try to avoid, but when I find someone that seems to be intelligent and willing to hear multiple sides of an argument, per se, I don't mind, because I enjoy that. But this person was, making a point that, I guess something came out about are Florida State fans going to root for Florida for this game? And this person was like, absolutely, because if they beat Georgia, all I care about is Florida State moving up in the polls. It's all I care about. So I'll absolutely root for a rival to do that. And then there were a lot of people that were like, I don't care if the earth is blowing up tomorrow and Florida has the keys to make that stop. I am never rooting for Florida ever.
I think
and
I would
I'm never rooting for Miami.
I'm not gonna lie.
Well, that may be a little over the top. But anyway, we had a nice back and forth, and I just can't do it. Can't do it. So if Miami happens to lose tomorrow, even though I've picked them to win, or Saturday, absolutely. We got a comment here, by the way, about the sign stealing. I want to put this up here and make sure that we pulled that in. FJA 243 says, TCU said they knew about Michigan from other staffs and had implemented new signs before the playoff. About that.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So even though maybe us normal folks are just hearing about this stuff, I don't have any doubt that in the football back rooms, people were already knowing what was going on.
So what you're telling me is that TCU expected Michigan, a team that they have no interconnectivity to, would steal their signs, but Jimbo Fisher had no idea that Damian Craig might have an inside scoop on their signs. That's what you're telling me here.
That don't mean diddly do.
Yeah.
So that's whatever. We have some other stuff we wanted to get to, but we're already up on 50 minutes here. But I'll just tease this. I'll tease this next week. Parker's going to be back with us. We're going to talk about, I know, not going to jinx it. We're going to talk about the percentages of who the opponent might be in the ACC championship. He's done some mathin on that. Put together a nice graphic. So we'll have Parker back next week to talk about that.
I think it's going to be Louisville.
Yeah, I mean, it could be any one of those schools that are kind of hovering around, 5-2, 6-1. So, any final thoughts, Parker?
No, just going back to what you said about your experience with a fan talking about whether they want Florida or Georgia to win. I know I'm in the minority, but because of where I grew up, I will take anyone over the team that plays 50 minutes to my northeast.
Yeah.
That includes Georgia. I mean, that includes Florida, and that includes Miami too. And it's a small part of it, but in my limited sample size, I have found that Florida fans are a little more tolerable than UGA fans, and I'm sure that's hard to imagine when you're down in Florida and you get all kinds of fans.
Yeah, that is hard to imagine, but that lets us look outside of our bubble, the Florida bubble, and
I
understand
only have
that
one
there's
problem with your story, though, Vince.
what's that?
It was some guy that you're talking to from Bro Bible.
Female.
Some guy named Sliced Bread.
Female.
And Sliced Bread. Yeah, I'd like to know who Sliced Bread is.
It's all about sliced bread. You know, anybody can say anything on the internet.
Bro Bible.
If you want to understand about sliced bread, go do a Google search for Jimbo Fisher sliced bread and just enjoy yourself.
One of the best clips of all time.
It really is. This has been a great show, guys. We got Wake Forest coming up this weekend. We also have, just to remind everybody, Ryan will be making the trip north back to Jacksonville. After his hospital stay at Mayo, he'll be coming over to Fishweir for our live broadcast from Fishweir Brewing Company. Game starts at noon. We invite everybody to come out. We're going to have a small contingent of Marching Chiefs alumni there. And the time is not TBA anymore, actually noon. So hopefully we'll see some folks that have the ability to get there this weekend out there. Great place to watch a game, have a couple brews, and hang out with some fellow Knowles.
If there's one thing I know from WebMD, Vince, is the best cold medicine is ice cold beer.
Yes, Garnet and Golden Ale, probably. And that also will take care of your dysentery as well. So, well, thank everybody for joining the show tonight. And hopefully we'll see some folks at Fishweir. And this has been Garnet and Old. No inside info, no contacts, no problem. Go Knowles. Send Chiefs all the day.